The 2025 Genesis G80. I'm revisiting an old friend. I'm in the Sport Prestige package with the twin-turbo V6. I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons, how this has evolved, and some of the changes they made to this car, and then we'll sum it all up. But let's start with the exterior. This is kind of a love it or hate it design. I think they've taken it as far as they can go with the refreshes at this point. It's not as classically designed as a Mercedes or an Audi, but it's definitely not as polarizing as the BMW equivalents these days. They've made some revisions to the split headlight design, the side markers. You can see in the headlight design, they have almost these individual pixel elements like the Hyundais do in some of their EVs. And of course, the side marker is clever. I will give them this. They're trying different things here. The rear end of the car almost looks identical. They have this triangular shape in the lower part of the bumper. So again, do you like it or do you not? I mean, sedans are going away, so I'll take what I could get. When we get on the inside, they have got some different color combos. I'm in the red and the black, and it looks like a 90s brothel in here. I mean, to be fair, I think it would look much better without the red. I thought the red would look interesting until I got into it. I don't think it matches the character of this car. However, I will say thank God it's not just black or beige or white. So everything on the inside does feel extremely high quality. When you get up to this upper trim level, which to be fair is like in the $80,000 range, you get soft closed doors, you get amazing ambient lighting that doesn't look like a circus in here. As you can tell by me just sitting here, it's really subtle. They have maintained physical controls in the key places, like on the door and the door handles. They haven't gone to some flush recessed handle that is, annoying. It's tried and true stuff. The steering wheel controls, although they have kind of bandwagon the Mercedes idea of using BlackBerry swipe, I mean, it's still functional. It works for how little you use it. The HVAC controls have gone to a digital screen at the bottom, but it is not tied into the infotainment, so it's very easy to use, and along with having not technically hard buttons, but capacitive touch buttons, but your volume knob feels really high quality. All the rotary knobs are great. It does maintain a physical D-pad rotary knob for the infotainment, and when you get to this upper trim level, you have this massive screen that is no longer just two separate screens. It's one wide aspect screen here, and the way that it is tied together is excellent. The speed of the processing is good, and Android Auto, which is wireless, and Apple CarPlay are really fast. Most every single function here is fast. But I do have one worry, and you can tell in the display there is looking like there's some burn-in or ghosting from having a static display up for too long, and you can see it in the middle part of the screen. I mean, it definitely looks suspect. So again, we're going to see in about 10 years how all these screens hold up. But really, the software is amazing. The safety suite works tremendously well. The eye tracking is not super annoying. I think this is what they do at a high level. The seating comfort is great. This does have this ergo motion kind of faux massager. It's more of like an anti-fatigue setting, but the seats are remarkably comfortable. They look great. I mean, you can adjust them to the moon. I think you're really going to like that. The center console area has this interesting gradient metal look plastic, and again, they're getting rid of piano black now, so you're getting into these interesting patterns that you know their designers love to do. It might add cost, but it looks great. Big wow factor. Storage in the front is pretty average overall. You're not buying it for this. There's some other things about this car. It is super, super silent. I'm going to get into the audio testing here in a minute, but it is a very, very quiet cabin. When you get in the back seats, they are remarkably comfortable. The rear legroom isn't as amazing as you would think a long wheelbase sedan would be like this, but it is just tremendous back there. You know, you don't want for anything more. The armrest comes down and you can close that rear shade back there, and you can turn on your seat heaters and turn that off from the armrest. Individual HVAC controls in the back. However, the rear seats do not fold down. So if you're looking for more space, despite the trunk being enormous, which it is, when you pop that open, you're like, holy cow. But not having the seats fold down in the rear is definitely, might be a deal breaker for certain families. But I mean, it makes this car far more isolated. I mean, that rear ring around there is solid. This thing's like a tank. So, I mean, there's only a couple things left to talk about. One is the audio system, and the audio system performance. When I tested it, I couldn't believe how good it was. I mean, this is the Bang & Olufsen, which is a part of Harman now. And when you look at the graphs, they went really neutral. The linear, or the response, the frequency response looks really good. There's a slight elevation in the bass, but I don't like how they do the EQ. It's kind of just really generic, bright or warm, and there doesn't give you the granular control. But I think once you get it where you like it, it's going to be really impressive. to me, subjectively, it doesn't sound alive enough. However, I'm getting so used to all of these skewed audio systems that go super bass heavy. So really, I can't complain. The graphs look good. I think you're really going to appreciate it if you're going to spend the money on this car. But let's head into the shop. We're going to talk about some of the changes that were made here before we take it for a drive. Underneath the updated G80, over the years they made so many revisions to this car, and it continues to be my favorite model that they've done. And it's crazy what they accomplished for the price point, starting at 58 grand to about $85,000. It competes with things like the 5 Series and the E-Class Mercedes. In some cases, it bests those cars, but you can't beat the budget, right? They can't do everything for that money, so I'm going to cover the pros and cons of this car now. I'm underneath the Sport Prestige trim level, and you get 2 engine options, 2.5 liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that makes 300 horsepower, or the 3.5 liter twin turbo V6 that makes about 375. That's not a lot of extra juice here for what you're getting, but what you're buying is the refinement of the V6. It's quieter, it's more isolated, it's less effort to push the car, it's more suited to a luxury sedan. Both engines are direct import injected, and they're paired to the same 8-speed torque converted automatic. Multiple revisions throughout the life cycle of this car. It's more smooth than it used to be. The V6 Sport Prestige package gets you a Sport Plus mode, which is more cohesive to what they're trying to do with the mechanical improvements. Now, on a base level, every single trim level gets monoblock 4-piston calipers, and every trim level gets all-wheel drive now. There's no rear-wheel drive option anymore because nobody bought it. When you get to the Sport Prestige version with the V6, you get performance brake pads to kind of suit some of those changes that this car makes. When you get to the advanced pack and up, you get variable gear ratio steering, which definitely makes this feel a bit more nimble, and you get adaptive dampers that are sport tuned, but the valving of the shocks have a better spread between soft and firm. There's better body control, but the sport packages definitely feel on the firmer side compared to the lower trim, so just know that. They are not using air ride on any trim, so what they're doing is read-ahead technology with their cameras to detect potholes and all that. What it will do is proactively soften up the suspension if it sees that. So that's kind of their response to more expensive suspension. So when you get to the Sport Advanced trim level, the Prestige pack with the V6, you're getting 3 things that are really important here. You're getting an ELSD limited slip in the back, a mechanical unit. Combined with that, you're getting rear wheel steering, which makes a massive difference with this car. It reduces the turning circle about 2 inches. You feel it in every single situation, which I'll talk about during the drive. And you get the adaptive steering in the front, variable gear ratio steering, which you feel instantly. It just feels like a more nimble car given its weight and size. But here's the negative part about this car. Given its weight and its mass, this is all steel. And the way they've been able to drive down cost is reduce some complication, but bringing everything in-house in terms of manufacturing. All the parts are theirs. But the negative part about doing that is you definitely, over the years of making this, they've had to do mitigation versus doing a clean sheet. Despite this having an SLA aluminum multi-link in the front, an aluminum subframe in the rear, and a multi-link in the rear, they've had to add all these vibration and frequency dampers all throughout the suspension, in the front, in the shock absorbers, in the back, in the subframe, the back and the carrier, and in different assemblies to kind of reduce some of the feeling of the suspension moving around. They're using hydraulic bushings in many places, and then despite them filling gaps in the body with foams and adhesives, you still feel some of this vibration. And when you look at the subframe mounts in the back, these giant rubber isolators, you still feel that transmitting something through the body, although minimal. They've done a great job with active noise cancellation and all the mitigation that they've done, but it really, at this point, they've done everything they can with this platform besides clean sheeting it, and that's how they've been able to keep the price point down. But let's take this for a drive and we'll cover all the pros and the cons.
Not just any businessman, Mark. I'm a Korean businessman.
You're full of prestige.
The power of Namyang and Gundam. Oh, I have to shift. That's how that works.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Look, it's no B58, Mark.
Oh, here we go.
You're not paying B58 prices. You're paying B48 prices. And all things considered, It's not terrible.
We can't just enjoy a nice Korean sedan, Jack.
No, I got to bring up Germany, Mark.
You always got to bring up Germany. Why don't you bring up the other sedans in this space if it's not German?
You got the CT5, which you can get the CT5V, non-Blackwing.
How much is that?
Actually less than this. I believe it's like in the mid-60s. So 60, low 70s for a pretty well-equipped variant.
Okay, let's talk about the Germans instead.
All right, I'll get this out of the way. The worst thing about this vehicle is its drivetrain. It's not that it's inherently bad, it's just that I think at that 75 point, you're looking at vehicles with better gearboxes and more refined sounding and more powerful 6-cylinder engines that also deliver better fuel economy. I think that the double hit of it not being all that inspired and only returning like 20 miles per gallon is pretty rough. But the interior and the exterior of this thing are superb for the amount of money you're paying. How do you feel about it as you spent more time in it than I have?
Well, this is a tough one, and I think this is the broken record of us. Every time I get into a G80 Sport, I want this to be a luxury car first, right? And it really does do those things. It is a quiet, isolated cabin, unbelievably quiet. It's refined. It does those things very, very well, in many cases better than the Germans for a lot more money. But again, this has always been the thing with this brand is drivetrains can't compete with the Germans, and I don't think they even care anymore. With their quest to go electrified, a lot of their budget is going in that direction. So while it is better than it used to be, it's not the best, and I would agree with you there.
I think the inputs, though...
Yeah, let's talk about that, because we're in the special one, right? You get an ELSD, rear wheel steering, a variable ratio rack. How does that feel to you?
It feels very BMW. I think not so much the rear steer part of it, but the steering specifically, it is almost unnaturally fast off-center. Essentially, there's a really quick ramp immediately off-center to get the car to turn in. While I don't think it's the most natural, it is effective. Despite how big this vehicle is, it feels very, very nimble. I don't think you're limit handling the G80. You're not going to be flying down a back road in your free time. What you're going to be doing is quick lane changes, trying to bob in and out of traffic, drive this like a true Hyundai Genesis man. And if that's what you're looking to do, it does a very, very good job at feeling very agile. The rear diff combined with the all-wheel drive system, I mean, we're on an all-season tire, and there's a mix of like salt, slush, dirt on the road, and it's doing a good job putting power down, and it rotates pretty naturally. Dynamically, as a big sports sedan, I don't think this is far off the 530 of this generation that we drove on this back road. That's really your apples to apples at this price point.
And I think that's what this really boils down to. You're getting this for discounts, right? You're not going to pay sticker on this car. You're not going to fight the dealers for that, and you're going to get incentives, maybe a good lease deal. I think the performance and the overall luxury part of this car is a really good combination. This is why it's been my favorite Genesis product, because it really does do things so well. You're getting a Sport Plus mode on this trim as well to kind of like improve transmission performance a little bit. I don't know. I really like it. There's something I can't put my finger on. I think maybe it's because it's different and not different in a bad way.
No, I think this, in some ways, what makes it feel different is the fact that it feels more traditional than all of its competitors. I think the E-Class is a better boat than this. I think it's quieter, it's more comfortable, it's softer, but the infotainment part of the E-Class is a giant pain in my ass.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts. The new 5 Series, I don't think looks anywhere as good as this. I don't think the interior feels as special. It feels more generic.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't ride all that well, at least the one we drove. It was definitely on the firmer side. What that car does better is the drivetrain side, but it's not an old BMW anymore. It's not this really connected car. So I think this G80 at, you said like 75 grand for this particular trim level is a compelling car.
Yeah, it does everything quite well. It does things better in almost every single place that you want it to do it, aside from like the extra edge of performance, right? If you had to give it the one knock, it's on the performance side. But everything else, to be fair, is at a very high level for what this is.
I would buy this as a old man spec.
Yeah.
You get the softer suspension of the luxury variant. Keep the V6, get with a good audio system and just put this into drive mode, put it in comfort, and just cruise down the highway.
Yeah, things just disappear in this car very easily. So let's get into the final thoughts, Jack. Sum all this up.
All right, let's do it.
So the conclusion of this video is pretty straightforward. The G80 has kind of always been that poor man's BMW, Mercedes, and Audi. You know, it was like for people that were tired of that and wanted like the fresh angle from the Koreans. When this car came out, it was more of a copy and paste job. Now it's definitely more on its own. They've done things their own way here, and you can tell. They've also allocated their budget and resources smartly to improve the things that it really needs relative to the market. Unlike, let's say, the G70, which they just let that thing die a slow, painful death. They've updated the tech here. They've updated the mechanical stuff. They kept the engines relevant. All of that really works good here. The Sport Prestige package with the rear wheel steering transforms this car. I mean, it's unbelievable what you can do with a long wheelbase car if you implement it right. It gets around the parking lot well, combined with the camera system, the tech features, and all of the features as a whole that you get for a far less price point that actually work, compared to the Germans where you just have to go well above $100,000 to get all the things that are here. So the question is, does it feel like a budget 5 Series or a E-Class? In many cases, no. It performs on the same level, if not better, but clearly the chassis refinement is still not there. It's always something, but they've tried their best to do it. If you're a go-straight person and just on the highway, you're gonna love this thing. But I will recommend, you know, if you've wanted to get in a G80 forever, the used prices are way better. Unless you're really looking for a good lease deal, which I think you're gonna find a lot more of on these things because sedans don't sell as much as they used to. You might wanna dip your toe in. If you can get a really good lease price, you are absolutely gonna love this thing, I promise you. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next video.